Alright, what's up guys? So today is going to be a controversial video, I think, because I see a lot of people that have Frostwing Greatsword in their set. And I understand why. It's the easiest one to build, it's the cheapest one, you get a lot of, if you get a Watcher, you're going to get a lot of chest. For Frostwing, so it's easy to do, but it's the cheapest, it's the easiest, and it's the worst of the level 60 equipment. Arguably. I know the winter mitts are not that great either, but it's a 4 rare material, so obviously it's not gonna be that great. So today I want to talk about the Skullcrusher. And I want to talk about the Frostwing Greatsword. And I want to say that the Skullcrusher is obviously way better than the Greatsword. We're going to go over the cabinet. And I want to... Obviously, when you look at the Greatsword, let's say at Mythic grade, you get 28% attack in infantry and cav, 17.5 in range. And the Skullcrusher, you get 28% base attack on all of them. So obviously, this is the equivalent of 28% infantry, 20% cav, and then range is 49%. And obviously, you get 28% siege, which doesn't really impact. It's just a little bit when you're defending. And you also have infantry defense, which I know a lot of people, when they look at the stats and they see defense and they think, this is worth 0%. Obviously, that's not true. There's a certain factor. I've seen factors thrown around. And in this video today, we're going to analyze basically, obviously, when you look grade for grade, the Skullcrusher is better. But the question is, one grade lower, is the Skullcrusher better or worse than the Greatsword? Because if you level these up, you'll usually have the Frostwing Greatsword either at the same grade or one grade above the Skullcrusher. So you want to compare them at one grade difference. And this is what I'm going to do today. So so let's bring this little analysis that I did. Yes, it is on a spreadsheet because that's how I work. All right. So basically, I've looked at green, blue, purple, gold, and mythic. And basically what I did is I said the defense percentage of the Skullcrusher, I took that percent and I divided by 5. So I said, like, if it was 5% infantry defense, I would say that's the equivalent of 1% infantry attack. I don't know what's the real ratio. Maybe someone like Crystal Briefs would be able to do a very nice analysis of that with testing and all that stuff. I've seen 5% thrown around, not 5%, but a 5 ratio, a ratio of 1 to 5 thrown around. I think it makes sense for defense. I've seen a 1 to 3 ratio for HP, which I think is not right. I think HP is a much closer to attack than people think. So with that out of the way, what I did is I calculated the cav attack, the ranged attack, the infantry attack, which infantry attack in this case would be the 6.2 of the cav attack, 6.2 of the army attack, and then basically I think it's 7% infantry defense at the green grade. So divide by 5, you add basically 1.5. So I added the attack of everything. So obviously you get the army attack is cav and range and infantry, and obviously the Skullcrusher is very, very good for range because it has the base, the army, plus an extra attack. And then you compare that to the Frostwing Greatsword. Obviously at the same grade, the Skullcrusher is always better. So we want to look at different grades. So when we look, and usually, I didn't look at grade because usually by the time you get level 60 and you can equip them, you probably have like a green Skullcrusher and a blue Greatsword. So If we look at that with that buffer, including the defense percentage of infantry, at green, the Skullcrusher is a little bit better than the Greatsword. At blue, it's about 10% better than a purple Frostwing Greatsword. Now that's where it gets interesting. At purple, the Skullcrusher is slightly below the Frostwing Greatsword. Damn, the Greatsword. And then at gold, it becomes better than a mythic Greatsword. So, and usually what you're gonna be seeing is you're gonna have, let's say, a blue Greatsword and a green Skullcrusher. And before you get your Greatsword to purple, you're gonna have your Skullcrusher to blue. Unless you build a subpar accessory with your brains, your mutated brains. And I say subpar because it is not part of a great set. Usually you'll want to max out on cups. And I'm not talking about champion. I'm talking about monster gear. Like a regular monster, you're going to want to have like a 2 cups and 1 ring, or 3 cups. But obviously 3 cups, it's harder to get. So, but the accessory, you're missing out on your main hand if you're building the accessory with mutated brain. And basically, like I said, by the time you get your Greatsword to gold, you're gonna have your Skullcrusher at purple, and before you get it to mythic, you'll definitely have your Skullcrusher to gold. So it's always gonna be either better or just slightly, like either way better at same grade, or slightly better, or only worse in the case of a gold Frostwing Greatsword compared to a purple Skullcrusher. Now I know, people will say, well, defense is bad, defense provides nothing, and blah blah blah. And I only like attack because I'm stupid. Okay, so people that are stupid, I'm glad you stuck around and you got to that point, because let's look at the graph for stupid people. All right. So the obviously the Skullcrusher for dumb people is without the defense stats. So if you look, so basically I didn't put the 5-to-1 ratio. And in this case, like, we need to look at the Skullcrusher. So at green grade versus blue grade, in that case, the Greatsword would be better, slightly better, about 5% better. So 1% extra attack, it's 5% difference. Obviously, that's assuming that defense does nothing, but it does something. And then when you compare blue to purple, the Skullcrusher is still better. Now, when you get to purple and gold, there's a 3.7% difference, which translates to less than really 10% when you compare both of them. But obviously, like I said, infantry defense has an impact. So, but for dumb people, yes, the Frostwing Greatsword at blue grade would be better than a green Skullcrusher, and at gold grade would still be better, obviously, than a purple Skullcrusher. But that's it. At mythic, the Greatsword is worse than a gold Skullcrusher. So whenever I see people with mythic Greatsword, I said, man, I wish I had those embers to put on my Skullcrushers. So that's basically it, guys. That's why I don't like the Greatsword. That's why I'm Team Skullcrusher. I've not always been Team Skullcrusher. I once was a bad player myself too. So let me know, guys, if I'm not saying to not build the Greatsword, because there's no alternative for Frostwing. That's the only piece of equipment that makes sense, and it's only at a certain point where it's better than the Skullcrusher. My suggestion, guys, keep building it to gold and leave it in your fake set, but focus on the Skullcrusher and save your blazed embers for something else, because like I'm showing, the Skullcrusher is better at gold than a mythic Frostwing Greatsword. Alright guys, write down your rants in the comments below. I know a lot of you are triggered because you have mythic Greatsword or gold and you build the accessory for the Hell Drider. Please let me know that you're frustrated with this analysis. That's so spot on. That's the truth. And if you don't like this analysis, go bug Crystal Brief so that he can do a video on the difference between the Greatsword and a Skullcrusher. Alright, thanks for watching guys, and see you later.